John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast. John Anik and Kenny Florian.
I f***ing love them. I can't get enough of them.
Let's hear that Boston next.
Big jab there from Duffy, and Frank Mir is hurt now. Down goes Duffy, out cold. Frank Mir does it again. Rock'em sock'em robots here. Oh my goodness.
Hyperbole.
There are a couple of absolutely self-involved bullshit artists.
Here are your hosts, John Anik and Kenny Florian.
Oh, come on. Who's excited? Hyperbole, yes. Self-involved, I'm not so sure. Oh, good Monday to you. Anybody else out there have good energy on a Monday? I'm a morning guy. I am relatively useless at night. Ken Flo, morning person, you're up pretty early.
I'm up pretty early these days. I've been sleeping a little bit better, but, sometimes up like 4 a.m., dude. So, yeah.
So when you procreate, you sort of give up in terms of the clock, right? You just sort of become a morning person, even if you are not one. But
right.
It's good to be with everybody live on YouTube. It is Monday, January 27th, 2025 is the year. It is episode 534 of the Anik and Florian podcast. We have a ton to get to today, albeit with a bit of a heavy heart. Today's show is dedicated to the memory of Barb Petrie, mother of Big Gun Brian Petrie, chief handicapper here on the Anik and Florian podcast. She passed away within the last 24 hours, and we knew Brian was not going to be with us today. He probably won't be with us for our UFC 312 preview, but certainly we are praying and thinking about the Petrie family today, Ken Flo, as we do this episode in Barb's honor.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brian wrote a beautiful post about his mother. If you guys want to check it out, lovely sentiments. And my heart goes out to him and his family.
Yeah, at Brian Petrie MMA, if you want to follow the man and pay tribute to the woman behind the man. All right, coming up today, we are absolutely loaded. We are drunk with talent. We'll be joined by former UFC welterweight champ Tyron Woodley, the number one overall pick in the Global Fight League draft over the weekend. So I watched a lot of that content. I have a lot of thoughts, right? I work for the UFC, but I got a lot of thoughts. Ray Longo is the coach of Team New York. I'm not sure the extent to which he knew about this initiative, but he'll be with us shortly for his weekly Ray Longo Minute. ESPN Radio's Josh Cohen stops by. We'll do some NFL stuff with him. It will be the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 59. He will also, I believe, have a UFC 312 pick for you guys later today. Leafwell CEO Emily Fisher and CMO Dr. June Chin. They'll join us. Some interesting stuff happening with sports leagues and cannabis that we will get into with them. Also, full preview, of course, our meat and potatoes with predictions. UFC Fight Night, Adesanya Imavov this Saturday in Saudi Arabia. And then after this 2-hour live exercise is done, another live episode today on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel, live at 2 p.m. Eastern. BKFC welterweight Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens. He coined the phrase cocaine Connor over the weekend. He also knocked out Eddie Alvarez in Eddie's native Philadelphia. We'll be live with Jeremy Stevens, Lil Heathen at 2 p.m. Eastern. All right, lot to get into. I have a lot to pick the brain of Ken Flo about today. Headlines is brought to you by Cuervo. Now's a good time to enjoy the tequila that invented tequila. I could have done the AM Cuervo today, the little AM Cristalino. I did not. Sober as a judge today, perhaps. All right. So UFC 312 is coming up here in a little bit. And Dricus du Plessis and Sean Strickland fought to a 5-round decision the first time around. UFC 297, I believe. It was in Canada. Among those who thought Sean Strickland won the fight were Joe Rogan and Dana White. A lot of us landed on the Dricus du Plessis side. Perhaps that is neither here nor there. Now, you and I are going to rewatch this fight as part of our Anik and Florian Rewind for UFC Fight Pass later this week. So what is your relative degree of excitement for this next UFC middleweight championship fight coming up at UFC 312? That is our next men's title fight here. And for me, it's wheels up to Sydney in less than a week.
No, I just watched that fight actually within the last 24 hours. So I have a lot of thoughts on it. I'll save as much as I can for our shows moving forward. But first of all, it was a great fight. And I think for DDP, I think he kind of has the advantage going into this. Why? Because he kind of fights the same way all the time. And so does Strickland. But I do feel like Strickland kind of is more singular in his approach in that he kind of likes to get in your face, throw a lot of combinations at you, and that's pretty much it. Whereas DDP can kind of take you down. He can use his grounded pound. He can submit you. He can strike you from the outside. He can be effective in the tie clinch with his strikes from there. So he's a little bit more multifaceted, in my opinion. So I think the onus is on Strickland to switch things up. I think it's going to be another amazing fight. Just the way that both of those guys fight. They're both aggressive. They're both very durable. They both like to move forward. So I'm really fascinated to see what happens in the rematch.
Did you actually score it round by round when you watched it back, or no?
I don't have it fresh like that. No.
Okay.
No, I was more watching.
I don't even know the extent to which it matters, but
right.
Part of what we do for the Anik and Florian Rewind is to watch it back without commentary. We provide live commentary. We get to cuss and everything. It's really, really fun. But I think for a lot of people, when they are handicapping that rematch and handicapping any UFC championship fight, they're going to UFC Fight Pass and diving in and doing all of that. So we enjoy doing that. And certainly for me, calling the fight coming up here at UFC 312, certainly part of my preamble is watching it back. So hopefully you'll join us for all of that. It also dovetails with what is happening this weekend. It's Israel Adesanya, Hildisanya, however you want to pronounce it. He's in a non-title fight, Kenny, for the first time since 2019, about a 2-1 favorite against Nassourdine Imavov. You'll give a pick later in the show, but early thoughts on the main event in the Kingdom of Riyadh.
Gosh, for this one, I feel like it's a good sign that Adesanya is facing someone like Imavov, but this is a very dangerous fight for him. And you look at, Izzy's last few fights. This is the worst streak he's ever had. He's 1-3 in his last 4 fights. Now, of course, you have to go back and look at the guys that he lost against, and the guy he beat, by the way, which is Alex Pereira during that stint. So he's never been in this type of situation before. What's his confidence like? Is he taking this one very seriously? Because, again, you fight a guy like Adesanya, one of the best middleweights, one of the best champions that we've ever had in the UFC, you're going to get up for that fight. So you know that Imavov is going to bring it. This is a huge opportunity for him. And for Izzy, he's got to go out there and defend his territory. And just interested to see how he goes about this fight.
So I think you get prime Israel Adesanya. I think you get a most committed guy. I think you get BJ Penn against Kenny Florian in 2009 or whatever it was. I really do believe that. And we have talked a little bit about the strength and conditioning program at City Kickboxing and how they have, sort of gone outside to get to that requisite next level. And Dan Hooker has sort of talked about it. And Dan Hooker sort of deadpans, 2 years ago, I really wasn't very good at mixed martial arts. And I think it's all really coming together for a lot of these guys. But yes, on paper, Adesanya has lost 3 of 4. How fucking annoying is it that I keep pronouncing it 2 different ways? The last stylebender has lost 3 of his last 4 on paper, but in terms of confidence, right? The win in there is a knockout of the vaunted Alex Poatan Pereira. So in terms of a confidence driver, I'm not sure that there's any bigger singular win in the UFC middleweight division over the last several years. All right, a lot of exciting things there. I do believe that that BJ Penn would have been great in bare knuckle fighting championships, even though his hands aren't that big. We're going to talk to Jeremy Stephens later today, and when I think about like platinum Mike Perry with these enormous mitts, right? And I think about Jeremy Stephens, I think has sort of great genetics for bare knuckle. Another guy I think of, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't believe elbows are not allowed in bare knuckle boxing, of course, correct? Right?
I believe so.
They're not. Right. Yeah, I should probably know the rule set. Can anyone out there, I guess maybe Cody or someone could chime in live, can you use the elbow in bare knuckle fighting championship? It is bare knuckle fighting. You can't kick. Of that, I can assure you. Anyway, I think Kenny Florian would have been a pretty good bare knuckle fighter. I'm going to ask Jeremy Stephens to show us his fist later today into the camera. Kenny's got some knuckles and, a lot of
kind of messed up. But
I mean, your hands are pretty banged up. BKFC Thailand fights. Elbows are allowed along kicks and knees. Trips and sweeps are not permitted. No, elbows not allowed in BKFC unless they're specifically applicable to BKFC Thailand. Good stuff there, being backed up by the producer Cody Merrow. So Kenflo, when you watch these absolute savages, or don't watch them, whatever it is your desire, I'm not going to transition to Power Slap after this, but what do you think about these guys competing in this endeavor? And might you have done it, for $350,000 or so to show, if your back was right?
Well, I'll say this. I enjoy the kind of the full spectrum of martial arts, getting a chance to use everything. And standing and trading with bare knuckles might not be my thing, John.
Yeah.
However, I absolutely respect it, and it's fascinating. It kind of harkens back to the time before boxing when this was what boxing was. It was bare knuckle, and I think that the margin for error is much smaller in BKFC. And why? Well, first of all, you can break your hands that much easier. You can cut a lot easier, and you can get hit one shot and swelling will occur almost immediately a lot of times.
Yeah,
whereas
right.
the glove may, protect against that a little bit. So I don't know. It's more dangerous in that regard, right?
So yeah, there's a certain danger factor that is there in this setting that maybe isn't there with immediacy in other settings. And this is why I think this is probably the best banner under which for me to fight my twin brother. And I'm not saying that to make you laugh on a Monday morning, but I think maybe we could do that at 145 pounds instead of 135 pounds. It would be a shorter fight, so it doesn't necessarily have to be some brutally cardiovascular driven training camp. And I'm hoping he can hear me right now to try to make him under prepare. But I do think, Kenny, in all seriousness, he might break my orbital pretty quickly there and the fight would be over. I might not even be concussed. I'd just have a broken face.
Right. Or just stitches all over your face, and now we got to use more makeup for John on the UFC Open. And then it's just a big mess.
It's basically a radio job. We're not even on camera.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
All that often. All right. So I want to talk to you about the Global Fight League, GFL. Okay. So to what extent have you followed what is going on, the draft and everything else? I know you're not prepared for this today, and that is by design.
Yeah. Precisely zero. I do know that I do know that Tyron was the number one draft choice. I have seen a lot of the names, but as far as how the draft worked and all that stuff, I know there's various cities involved and teams. So I know kind of stuff on the peripheral.
All right. So I always tell fighters that they can cancel their interviews with us because I am fighter first always. But if indeed Tyron Woodley joins us as scheduled, I do have a lot of questions as to the schedule and how it's all going to play out. And I know they're not going to fight guys, obviously, that are on their teams, but what if a bunch of people from Team Los Angeles advance? I got a lot of questions. Maybe I should book the league commissioner, but
what if they get traded? What if they get traded to another team?
I don't even know if that's allowed. I mean, Ray Longo is coming up here in 2 minutes, and I can assure you that today's interview will be far more hard-hitting than the one that he went through as part of this GFL draft. So we'll see if he has questions or laughs in my face, as he oftentimes does during the Ray Longo Minute. But Luke Thomas, who is an MMA mind and combat sports mind that I respect a great deal, just ingested some of his content this morning, and when he talks about the GFL, he does not expect this league to realize success, right? He says, and these are just quotes that I'm plucking, right? So they're not taken out of context, but sort of ordinary MMA, ordinary mixed martial arts. And for Ken Flo, I know for you want to watch the highest level mixed martial arts possible. I understand that, right? So ordinary MMA, right, which really refers to the rule set, right? You're not doing pride rules here. So it's regular MMA as we know it, with people who largely are mega washed and or in their 40s and or telling the fucking court that they have brain trauma, right? So that is part of what is going on here. And that's a quote from the highly respected Luke Thomas, who also says, what people want to see, yes, star power, but they really are drawn to the best fighters in the world in their weight class. And most of those exist in the UFC. There are some prospects under this GFL banner, but a lot of these fighters, Kenny, have had great success in the UFC. Tyron Woodley has been the undisputed welterweight champion, more than once defended the title. His future's in the UFC Hall of Fame. Alexander Gustafsson, one of the best fighters ever to have not realized that fate and UFC gold. But I just don't know exactly, what the goals are and how exactly they are going to get there. So maybe we'll get some answers later today.
Yeah. So, to play devil's advocate, I would say a lot of fans aren't necessarily trying to see the best technique possible or the best fighters possible because largely, and this is no offense, is they don't know who the best fighters in the world are. They don't know what the ultimate in technique is necessarily. They just kind of know what they're told. Now, the UFC has the best fighters in the world, right? That is undebatable. And I think what fans like more than anything else, in my opinion, is a good storyline and exciting fights. And, whether the GFL can deliver on that. I don't know. Hopefully there's some exciting fights, but there is a lot of truth to what Luke Thomas is saying, that also a lot of these guys are certainly way past their prime, and how much they have left to give the fans. I guess we're going to find out.
So Ray Longo is the coach of Team New York, and I guess I'll save the Ray Longo stuff for Ray, Kenny, but Jeremy Stevens was drafted to Team Miami, I believe, while he was competing against Eddie Alvarez, or at least on the same night. So it's going to be very interesting to see exactly what happens. I know each of these cities, Dubai, Los Angeles, London, Miami, Sao Paulo, New York, will all host fights during the regular season. And, there's some scoring things, maximum 4 points available per fight. If you're a finisher like Hemflo, you get those 4 points, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this goes. And one other thing in my notes from Luke Thomas, just bouts of consequence, Kenny, right? And when I look at Team Los Angeles, and I'm not trying to be fucking Debbie Downer on a Monday morning, right? Because I still do believe Tony Ferguson can win a mixed martial arts fight as I sit here in 2025. I really do believe that. But when I see Tony Ferguson and Uriah Faber, who is talking of getting a fight against Renan Barao, whom he lost to twice, Chad Mendez, Rashad Evans on Team Los Angeles, whose first pick was Sage Northcutt, I just don't know exactly what we're doing here. But I'm certainly giving it some coverage today. And, we'll see what Longo has to say about it in a couple of minutes. But as a kid, and really as an adult, I love cereal. I love eating it. I like all the different flavors. I like the cereal aisle. But at this stage of my life, I can't have all that sugar. Ken flows all over me. Most cereals don't give me the protein I need as well. But then I found Magic Spoon, a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like my childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. Magic Spoon has also turned their super popular cereal into high-protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars you came to love. Magic Spoon's treats, so delicious. I'll eat them before the gym. Sometimes if I'm getting crazy, as a high-protein snack right after a workout as well. Every serving of Magic Spoon high-protein cereal, crazy macros, 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs. They come in a lot of nostalgic flavors like cocoa and cinnamon roll. My favorite is the fruity flavor. I eat it by the handful. Straight protein, Ken Flo. Also the high protein treats, crispy, crunchy, airy, easy way to bang 12 grams of protein on the go. They come in mouth-watering flavors, marshmallow, chocolate, peanut butter, dark chocolate. My daughter Riley brings them to school. She loves them. Glad this is what she is eating in the middle of the day. And you can get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/AFpod, or look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. I get it at Publix. That's magicspoon.com/AFpod for $5 off. All right. Should be a contentious Ray Longo minute today. Let us get to the star of the show.
It's now time for the Ray Longo Minute.
I want you to punch a hole in his fucking chest. That's what I want.
The Ray Longo Minute. Starring Ray Longo. The John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast.
Hey! What are we doing here?
Look at that hair.
My goodness.
Does it not surprise me that the fruity flavor is your favorite?
It doesn't surprise a lot of people. I'm sure you probably don't like my rainbow bracelet either. And I don't like your disheveled look. I mean, at least for the GFL draft, you put one of their hats on because you said your hair was a mess. My goodness, Raymond, we're live, Ray.
I like the Mad Genius look, Ray. It's good. It's good. It looks good.
Hey, Kenny, before we got to hook up later. The guys at the school are begging for a Ken Flo seminar. Begging.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Kenny. Let's talk. I'm coming. I'm coming to New York.
I'm so excited.
Is that on the house? I mean, what are we charging? You think this guy shows up for free?
No, that guy makes money. It's all about, I don't know. We take care of our own, John.
Yeah, maybe you can grease him with some of that GFL money you're getting.
Oh, shit, man.
I don't know what you think you signed up for today, but if you think this is going to be some fluff interview in which they call you Ray,
hey,
like we're going to hit you hard today.
Hold on a second. You ever see Hogan Zero? Is that familiar? The old Hogan Zeros? Anybody?
1% of our audience.
I know nothing. Nothing.
I see nothing. I know nothing.
I know nothing.
Kenny Florian was not one of the 420. You played the fifth? Well, it's going to be a short Ray Longo minute then. So Kenny Florian was not one of the 450 fighters who was, 420 fighters who could have been drafted. 120 were drafted. So I'm not going to get serious on you just yet.
And that's because he hasn't reached 50 yet. If he was 50, what's the matter with you guys? You going to do this to me?
No,
you gonna do me like this today?
No.
John,
No.
you look exceptionally good. The lighting is fantastic today.
Oh, we're in the
does look
studio. These
fantastic.
cameras are worth more than my life.
No, let me tell you, Kenny, look at him.
He does. He looks fantastic.
Motherfucker. Kenny, you're definitely painting your teeth, too. This is not good.
These things. I just ate. I was concerned. I was like, I should have brushed my
Holy
teeth.
shit, man.
Look at this guy trying to change the subject. So one thing that I will say is the team concept in mixed martial arts, and I am not the first talking head to say this. A lot of fighters get excited about the team concept, especially at this stage of their careers, and the ability to compete for a team, Ray, right? Like Tony Ferguson, when he was asked about all of this, and people can look at his Wikipedia page that is bleeding with red stripes right now. I understand it, right? Yeah. But the first thing that came out of his mouth, Kenny and Ray, was this team concept and how, playing baseball and wrestling for a team. He's excited to compete for a team. And I really respect that that was the first thing that came out of his mouth. So that at least I think is a big reason to get behind this.
Yeah, 100%. Look, Darren's heart is in the right spot. He wants to do the right thing by the athletes in every way, shape, and form. I mean, can he pull it off is going to be, well, that's what we got to see. But his heart, 1,000,000% is in the right spot. And that's why, I like it. And I do like the team concept. I like even the gym concept. Gym against gym, I think, would be awesome too. You know what I mean? Like, or each state has their own people. I think it's exciting. And, if you're proud of where you live and everything like that, I think it's a really cool concept.
I did a lot of preparation on this. So, Ray, if you'd rather talk about the MMA Junkie headline today, Aljamain Sterling looking at April maybe versus Arnold Allen or Brian Ortega, we can certainly talk about that later, right? But for people who don't know, the GFL, 120 fighters out of 420 were selected across 6 teams. It launches in April. The league that will, quote, change mixed martial arts forever. So 20 fighters on each team. And the coach for Team New York is Ray Longo. Yours is the only team that for manager says TBD.
Right.
So who's your manager? I mean, I'm a Boston guy, so I certainly wouldn't even throw my name into the hat, even if I was underqualified. I mean, just manager Thiago Alves for Miami, Luke Barnett for London, Vanderlei Silva is the manager of Team LA, Cardio Cain Velasquez manages Dubai. Do you have any idea who your manager is going to be, and will you take part in that selection? And is that a fair question?
Can't we all just get along? Look at him.
He doesn't want to answer.
He can't even make eye contact with nothing. Don't turn your head on me. What do you?
Well, I didn't know. Maybe I should have pre-screened you today. So do you not know who your manager is going to be?
I know who a potential manager could be.
All right. You don't have to break the news. Right. Okay. I just found it interesting.
Well, I'll give you a guess. Who do you think it would be from New York?
Matt Serra, if you can come up with enough money, right?
That's a good guess. But
come up with enough money. All right. So,
Henzo. Manager,
Henzo's a charismatic guy.
100%.
Yeah.
Did he say somebody else?
Charismatic as it gets. Henzo. He said Henzo Gracie.
Oh, wow.
So you'll have to stay tuned and, make sure you follow the GFL website and see who they pick.
Doesn't Henzo have like 190,000 students? Like, what does Henzo Gracie cost the GFL?
Do you know? Have you ever met Henzo?
Many times. I've called his fights.
Guy's a multitasker. That guy could do everything at the same time.
He's into everything.
He's all over the place. So I think he's actually perfect.
All right. Go ahead, Ken Flo.
I was going to say, one thing that I feel like the GFL does have going for it is the nostalgic factor, right? The nostalgia factor where, guys came up in that era, when I was fighting and all those other guys that came before me and after me, like that little era of when things just started to kind of get going. Do you think that can kind of carry people in at least to kind of watch this year and kind of get behind the GFL idea?
Well, look, everybody back, I think we've talked about like what they call it, like not a league where, the older fighters fight each other. What do they call that?
Like a Legends League. Vitor Belfort wants one where testosterone's allowed.
Yeah. So I think kind of you're seeing a little bit of that too. It could be like, as long as the matchups are right, you have like a Legends League too. And with some other people that are, good fighters that, haven't hit that point yet, but we'll see. So I think it's got a little intrigue to it. It's got name value to it. And, this isn't an easy business. I've been involved in it in a long time. So I think he's got the right funding behind him, it seems like, and we'll see where it goes. I just want to coach. That's it.
But do you know the extent to which you will be coaching your athletes? Kevin Lee, Chris Weidman, Holly Holm, Dylan Dennis, Jimmy Rivera, Oven St. Preux, and Phil Hawes among them?
No, I think what the thing is that anybody wants to come to the gym, they more welcome to train at the gym, but I think they'll be training with their own people.
Right.
And that's it.
Now, Chris Weidman was sort of having fun with it when he said, I can't believe Ray chose Kevin Lee number 1 overall, but you didn't actually make that selection. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So obviously there's enough meat on the bone that we're talking about this. You can abort mission anytime. I hope you don't terminate our friendship, but I do believe there's enough here to discuss, right?
I mean, as much as I can answer, I'll answer.
Okay. So each fighter has revenue share. I think 50% of revenue goes to the athletes. There's a lot of good in terms of what they are trying to do here. But Chris Weidman sort of forced into it or otherwise announced his retirement on the UFC weigh-in show. And then 8 days later was announced on this team. So is it your expectation that we are going to see Chris Weidman compete in mixed martial arts potentially in April when this season launches?
100%.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I know ESPN tells us not to ask yes or no questions. But
Weidman always was a leader. You know what I mean? So I think he's going to be a great guy in the locker room. I think people, he's had his ups and downs, but I think people still respect what he did. And he's definitely an imposing figure still. I think he'll be a great guy to, people to inspire some people.
I know Ray hates me right now, but I do think it'd be interesting if we see you and Weidman in the corners, when Kevin Lee competes potentially, if you're
right?
an added corner man, right? I think that would be really interesting to see as an MMA fan, right? I'm talking about this because I'm an MMA fan, right?
Yeah.
If for a second I could separate myself from my job, we're talking about this because I'm an MMA fan, even if I could cast doubt on a lot of this. You need a fucking manager for your team. What the fuck you guys doing?
Probably Kevin Lee. I'm probably the last guy.
What about Kenflo if you can't get Sarah or Henzo? Kenny's expensive too. Pay Kenny in Bitcoin to be the coach of Team New York. He's a bossy guy.
First off, Kenny, with the way Bitcoin is going, this guy's got to be. I don't know. He might be a billionaire as we're talking.
He's gonna quit the show.
Oh, he's happy. You got to be happy with the way things are going.
Well. It's going
now, come
well.
on, man.
Thank goodness. There were some scary parts. I had to ride those waves.
Looks like Trump's embracing this whole thing. Man.
Yeah.
Hey, could still be some scary parts, but I will just tell the masses out there as Bitcoin resides around 104 or so thousand.
Wow.
I remember when it was 61,000 and Ken Flo's like, hey, John, I know you may. You just need to plunge again when it's 61,000. I said, you know what, Kenny, I'll plunge at 65 a few days later. And here we are. And it's almost double that. All right. Have I exhausted my questions on the GFL? All right. Do you have any other details in terms of when your first obligation might be in terms of cornering, coaching, when any of your team, Holly Holm or anybody else might show up in your gym? Are you going to be in Holly Holm's corner alongside Mike Winklejohn? I mean, what's going on?
I don't know. We're going to find out, but I think the first show is slated for the end of April.
All right. And we'll get more answers because we have the number 1 overall draft pick, Tyron Woodley, joining us later today.
Oh, wow. We should get Tyron on the show too. He'd love it.
Yeah, maybe for the Ray Longo Minute next week, and we can all get answers together.
Yeah.
Kenny, I wanted to ask you a question. So Robin Black was part of the commentary team for this draft. He suggested that Gegard Mousasi should have been the number 1 overall pick, right? So in terms of pure competitiveness and the Luke Thomas 3 words, bouts of consequence, right? I think that's interesting. Like, where is Gegard Mousasi right now? Because that is one of the names that was invoked by Chris Weidman in terms of guys he has history with, Mousasi, Yoel Romero, right? Yeah, I think Barao Faber would be of intrigue to some people potentially, Kenny, right? But like Gegard Mousasi, right, in 2025, he's still on the right side of 40, I believe. How competitive can Mousasi be right now could tell us a lot about the GFL's future.
Totally. And he's been out for a little while, and I'm glad that he ended up somewhere else. I know he was with the PFL Bellator, couldn't get a fight for a long time, But now having one of these big names and a guy who has been extremely successful over the course of his career, I think it's great that now he has an opportunity to compete again. And he has been out a while. Curious to see, how much rust there is on him, but I still think he can be very successful.
You got Benson Henderson on Team London. He hasn't fought since, I believe, March of 2023. Abubakar Nurmagomedov on Team Dubai. So perhaps you'll see Khabib in a GFL corner there for a really good human being, Abubakar Nurmagomedov. All right, we'll see what happens with the GFL. We wish everybody the best with that initiative. So it feels like Merab Dvalishvili and Umar Nurmagomedov, Raymond, fought a long time ago, but it really isn't all that long ago. And I just wanted to marinate on that if we could just a little bit. And I know some people felt as though maybe Ken Flo and I were apologetic or Umar leaning in terms of some of what we said on the show last week. And, the Merab Dvalishvili celebration continues. I feel like in terms of degree of difficulty, this opponent on this timeline was a really hard thing to accomplish. And I just wanted to live in that for a minute with you, if I could.
Yeah, and 100%. I thought you guys didn't do anything obscene last week, but he's coming back to New York. I think he's back today. Hopefully, we'll give him a victory party tomorrow night at the gym. Maybe a rewatch party, so I could see if I haven't rewatched it yet. I want to see if John said any derogatory things towards Merab. We'll find out.
Well, I think when you guys have that watch party, you shouldn't have commentary. You should have like music that he can dance to. You don't need the commentary, do you?
No, I want to hear the commentary.
Well, I think the commentary was reflective of a fight that was 2-0 challenger after 2, but then certainly it was in awe of Merab. Hey, I criticized Alexander Volkanovski when I thought he was showboating a little bit in that fight with Islam Makhachev, right? And some people like the Merab showboating. I don't necessarily feel like it is. I think it's risky sometimes when you're showboating, when you're stuffing takedowns,
I got to tell you, John, and I talked about the showboating with what podcast did I do? I don't know.
You do it. What you do? How many pay you? We pay you. I know our Q4 payment is late, but how many actually pay you? I know you do all these fucking shows, right? Me. My God, oversaturation, saturated fat.
Oh my God. Oh, somebody help me. I forgot. I lost my thought. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, the showboating. Yes. I think Anthony Smith. That was where I was doing it. But where I do think for this fight it was appropriate because I think he physically broke him. Then I think he attempted to mentally break him, which he did it. Look, that's got to be frustrating. A guy doesn't even give a shit if he's holding you down. He's letting you up. He's hitting. He's laughing at you. I don't know. I think for this one, I got to go with it. But when I was rewatching some of the stuff, man, he's crazy. Yeah, he let the guy up. It was a little too much. I tell you. At the time I was enjoying it, but I went back and looked at some of the clips. He is ballsy, but he doesn't give a shit. That's what I love about him.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, right?
It's a double-edged sword.
Because you kind of have to put it. You have to put it into the context of that round. Like, is he doing it to kind of say, "Oh, those shots aren't hurting me," or is he showing, "Hey, I'm so damn comfortable right now, I can do this"? But I imagine it can get a little hairy when those rounds were close, like it was. But it worked for him in the end. So
it's crazy. Look. It definitely was the second thing you said. He was so comfortable. I think that's what it's showing. He just the lack of respect was crazy. He didn't care. But I could tell you in that corner throughout that whole fight, and I'd have to check with Wood or Aljo. Nobody was. We never thought he was behind. Never. You never. I don't think, John. Right? You never heard a code red like you gotta you win the next 3 rounds or
no. I thought he was up as well. It can also act as a demoralizer for your opponent when you see your other guy like celebrating and like enjoying every single second of the round. You're like, oh my God, what do I got to do against this guy?
Exactly, and I think that's the beauty. That was the beauty of it. But I think it was what you said. Just I'm so comfortable. It's like you play sparring with a guy in the gym who can't do anything to you. It's not a good feeling.
Yeah. So I feel like Merab and Umar both had moments in rounds 1, 2, and 3. And if memory serves, rounds 4 and 5 were the most clear, even though I thought rounds 1 and 2 were fairly clear for Umar. So I think for you guys, right, there was productivity in every round, right? So,
listen. What were Uman's moments? What stands out to you?
well, I think Marab was the more facially damaged fighter. Does that count for nothing? It looked like he ate some shots.
Absolutely nothing.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
tell you only what you ever see the guy's face. It's a ball of scar tissue.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Vito Antifermo used to bleed walking into the gym. Just walking in, he'd start bleeding.
Our producer Cody Merrow says that he thought Umar stung Marab in round 1.
He hit him with one shot, looked like his leg, but nothing.
Okay.
That's
All right.
that's the shot. That's the only thing I saw.
Okay.
That led me to believe, you know what, they might give him the round
Right.
based on
Right.
that if they're looking at damage. Give me something else.
Right.
There's
All right.
nothing else besides that.
All right. So I have one would you rather question for you today, but
Oh my God.
no, it's not part of the men's health list. So Merab Dvalishvili and Aljamain Sterling live on the same block. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 150 yards or so, but certainly it stands to reason that Merab could throw a baseball to Aljo's house. On Embedded, it was documented he called out for Aljo, and Aljo came over and watched the fights, right?
Oh, that's
so
funny.
would you rather have Merab Dvalishvili or Aljamain Sterling as your neighbor for any potential block parties that you want or don't want?
Oh, that's a good question. That's funny.
Well, I usually stall for
I'm
Kenny, but go ahead.
gonna go with Marab because Aljo is really one of those, you got to put you got to take the house has to be neat. He has to, everything's got to be in the right spot. So I'm sure Marab would be the better neighbor. If you're not tight like me, I'd like to just go off the seat of my pants. But I think Marab's probably the better neighbor for that. Aljo's strict, man. Aljo runs a tight ship. Marab's got all the Georgians there. If you like people, I think that he's probably your better neighbor.
Yeah.
If you like tidiness and cleanliness, then Aljo's your better guy.
Just imagine the handyman that Merab could be if anything goes sideways, and Aljo probably disappear. I don't think you'd see much of him, right? Depends what you're looking for in a neighbor. I think Ken Flo would choose Aljo because he wouldn't be omnipresent.
Yeah.
I think I would choose Merab just because I'm not very handy, but I do believe there'd be times where Merab wants to hang out where maybe, other people trying to get some shut eye, but yeah. So go ahead, please.
I don't know. I was going to say somebody else asked me because of you. They asked me, would you rather? I thought it was a really good one.
Who?
Guy's name is Romy. He's a Georgian guy. He comes to the gym, but he has a podcast that he just for Georgians, I think. I don't know.
So now you have people stopping you in the streets and in the gym because they listen to this show asking you, would you rather questions. Is that accurate?
I have to assume that.
Well, what else would it be? Well, he's just asking you out of the blue. Did he reference the show?
I mean, you didn't come up with this whole.
No, I credit Men's Health every time. I'm just curious.
Or maybe he reads Men's Health. I don't know.
Yeah.
So here's the question: Would you rather have 10 champions who defend their title once, I think, or one champion who defends his title 10 times? That's a good thought-provoking, not whether do I want to wipe my ass with a toothbrush or brush my teeth with sandpaper. I thought this was thought-provoking.
Yeah.
Kenny, what do you think?
They're both thought-provoking, just in different ways.
He just wants to keep it about the mixed martial arts. I understand. He just wants to talk fighting. 10 world champions without question, right? I mean, certainly you could have somebody who is defending the title multiple times like a George St. Pierre or someone like John Jones, and there are different challenges I think that maybe would come with both of those athletes, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say to build 10 world champions Longo style would be the way to go.
That's the way I went, because you could have one superstar that you don't, like he's going to win no matter where he's at, right? Or you're proving that you have a recipe to get guys there.
Yeah.
So I like that. I thought it was a good question.
All right. 2 more questions if I could. So Jimmy Rivera is a police officer and he is on your team. I wonder if you and Stephen Lee, your great manager, are your wheels spinning that you maybe get Jimmy Rivera the Tiger Shulman guy, and get all the great police officers there to Longo MMA, and this might be a good recruitment tool, this GFL. I mean, are we thinking outside the box here? You obviously want the Ken Flo seminar, which we're going to get on the books.
Oh yeah, we're doing that. No, look, I haven't seen Jimmy in a while. Always was a good fight. Obviously, Aljo fought him, but he was on the local circuit forever. We'll see. I don't know. I'm not thinking outside the box though.
All right, last question. Fact or fiction? When Dylan Dennis competes for the GFL, Ray Longo is going to be in his corner.
Look, I'm paid to do a job, and if I signed up for it, I'll do my job. That's it, period. Does that answer the question or no?
No.
No?
You don't know.
I'll be in the corner. Yeah, 100%. If that's
amazing.
If that's what I'm paid to do, that's what I'm paid to do. I mean, I didn't pick him.
It really is going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
John's wheels are spinning. Get Darren on the podcast next week.
will.
I'm sure he'd love to be on.
But
line up your questions.
I
I'm
would
not
love
the guy
to.
to ask. I'm a coach. I don't know.
I know, but you're on our show every week though, and you're one of the fucking coaches, right?
Yeah.
Like this, and I love you like a brother. I could have hit you a lot harder on the Weidman thing. I mean,
Without a doubt.
we just had a retirement party for the guy. I let you go. Hey, I love you.
I mean, do we take back what we said about him now? I mean, we wasted all that time.
I know. We're gonna have to do it again.
The guy fucked us.
He's back in.
He did. I do think Aljo's going to.
Because he did that, I took Kevin Lee over him.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's the narrative. That's what's out there. Yeah, I think it might be Arnold Allen or Brian TC Ortega for Aljamain Sterling. It's just going to be big fights, man. I think Aljo might get to a title fight. I really do.
Aljo's he's in a great spot. He's at peace with everything. I think it's going to be hard to rattle him like before with all the title defenses and all that crap. I think I really think he did what he had to do. One of the best to ever do it. And I think what I see is a guy who's very free and just probably wants to fight more now than he did 5 years ago. He just looks very comfortable to me.
That last one was super close, man.
Yeah, it was super close.
Yeah.
I mean, no winner or loser in that fight to me. You could have won either way. I definitely, obviously, would have given it to Aljo, but he's in a really good spot. I really like where he's at, man.
Yeah. All right, my brother. Well, have a great day and a better evening. And you're always a good sport. And the only reason this show rates is because of you and all of that. So have a great day.
Would you rather?
Would
Kenny,
you rather?
No, Kenny, definitely text me later.
I will.
Yeah, I got to get it.
I will. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
No, well, Kenny's going to do a seminar. We're going to do a broadcasting seminar at your gym. We're going to do it all.
Oh, yeah.
By the way,
tell you what, John, we should wait.
You're right.
And do the seminar 100%.
Yep.
But I don't want to wait too long. Kenny, he needs the money for the Bitcoin. We got to get him in there.
Hey, have a great day, my man. Thank you.
Take it easy. Kenny, definitely text me to remind me.
I will. Thank you so much.
Take it easy, man.
Talk soon.
Take care. Bye.
Ray Longo Minute every week here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Kenny Florian will need a business class round trip airfare to Garden City. Yes. And Ray, he probably won't do the Italian dinner after the seminar. It's probably in and out for Ken Flo. And he's just going to have to deal with it. All right, a lot of good things coming up on the program today and coming up in 2 weeks. You know what it is. It's not the little itty bitty teeny tiny bowl. It's Super Bowl 59, and you can get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 59. Prevailing wisdom is that scoring touchdowns is key to hoisting the Vince Lombardi trophy, and you got a shot to score big by betting on them right now at DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. A.J. Brown, plus 165 right now to get in the end zone for Philly. Xavier Worthy, plus 170 to hit pay dirt for Kansas City. Those are just a couple of the myriad ways to attack the board. Chiefs and Eagles going toe-to-toe in 2 weeks. And new DraftKings customers can bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, not now, but right now use code AFPOD. That's code AFPOD for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 only on DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. New customers only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio. All right, now joining us live here on the Anik and Florian podcast, and it brings us great privilege to do this as we go 4 wide. I mean, look at this shot. Everybody is here. It's green corner, and you may recognize Dr. June Chin, who has been with us before, Leafwell's chief medical officer. Also with us today for the first time, and very happy to have her, the founder and CEO of Leafwell and cancer survivor as well, Emily Fisher. June, Dr. June, Emily, great to have you guys with us. How are we doing?
Great. Thank you for having us. It's great to see you, John, Kenny. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us again.
It's our pleasure. So the green corner, as we're now calling it, so several times a year, you guys are going to be joining us. Certainly Dr. June Chin will be with us, and hopefully Emily when her schedule allows. But there's no doubt that what you guys are doing industry-wide is, I think, changing how people view cannabis. And in the world of healthcare, obviously things are changing rapidly when it comes to medical cannabis. So here we have a doctor, we have a patient, and a CEO. So Emily, I guess I'll start with you off the top. What was the impetus for starting Leafwell, and where are you, I guess, relative to your initial expectations?
Well, I suppose I'll say that I come into this, as you said, as a patient. I've had breast cancer twice, so I know exactly what it feels like to fight for your health. And as a patient, I wanted every tool that I could have to help me in my journey, and I found cannabis that way. I also worked with cannabis patients in California for 3 years before starting Leafwell, and I saw the profound impact cannabis had in their lives. And I think it was both that experience and also my own personal experience that really inspired me to start Leafwell. Honestly, I felt like I didn't have a choice. You know, there's millions of people who are benefiting from cannabis today, but there are millions more that could benefit that aren't yet benefiting. So I feel like we have so much work still to do. I feel like we've only done 10% of what
Right.
we set out to do. You know, our mission is to increase access, education, and much needed research. We really need to better understand this plant and its utility as a medicine, and we are making great progress in that journey. But there's still so much work to do. You know, cannabis isn't a silver bullet, but its ability to support patients is really extraordinary. And so we're really excited about the work we're doing at Leafwell.
Yeah, education is the buzzword for me. There still is a lot of ignorance, you know. Now, in terms of sports, Dr. June, and athletic organizations, right? Like when you see the NCAA removing it as a banned substance for D1 athletes, or the NFL going to lengths to maybe reduce penalties for players, like, are you guys internally celebrating that because it sort of speaks to the evolution and the education of cannabis? And on a level like that, it sort of rings true with you guys internally in terms of what you guys are doing?
Absolutely. You know, we have 7 studies that are published or on the way of being publishing. And we know that cannabis enhances recovery. We know that it improves pain perception and mind-body awareness. So this makes us very, very excited, not only for the athletic space, but also for post-athletic space, for retired athletes. You know, what happens after a lifetime of chronic injury and acute injury.
So, Emily, you know, I heard you guys are providing some municipalities and their employees with some medical cannabis. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys are doing in Trenton, New Jersey?
Yes, absolutely. I think I'll start with just saying that employers today are really faced with 2 significant challenges. One is rising healthcare costs every single year, and the other are employees that are suffering from chronic pain, anxiety, mental health. And so we're really excited to be partnering with employers in New Jersey to offer cannabis care as a sponsored employer benefit, essentially enabling their employees to explore cannabis as an alternative to their prescription medication. This is truly exciting because it's systemic change, as you can imagine. You know, obviously, regulation has been moving forward in the US, around the country, but still there's, you know, a significant number of people that could benefit from cannabis, and they are scared of trying cannabis because of fear of workplace repercussions. So now if your employer is saying to you, well, actually cannabis could be an alternative to your prescription medication, that changes it as an option for people. And that's essentially what we're doing with employers. And with anything, research is so important, and we're being very diligent about collecting data on the impact of employees using cannabis as an alternative. And the preliminary research is super promising. It's not just good for employees, it's also good for the organizations. You know, we're seeing a reduction in healthcare utilization. We're seeing a reduction in prescription medication. We're seeing an improvement in overall quality of life, a reduction in absenteeism. And so this isn't just about, you know, offering patients an alternative. This also supports really the objectives and the challenges, helps employers with the challenges that they're faced with.
And Dr. June, you know, we're seeing more athletes turn to medical cannabis to help them. Obviously, whether it's the stress of training or the bumps and bruises that you get over the course of your training, whether it's for a fight or maybe something else. You know, what are some of the benefits of using cannabis? And are there, I guess, specific flowers that are better than others? So yeah, I'm just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I'd love to address that. You know, I give an example. Some of my colleagues who, let's say, is not doesn't believe that cannabis can be a medicine, will tell me, well, cannabis just numbs your emotions and it actually can break down that post-recovery cycle. And I don't agree with that, because that's not what the science shows. So when we think of athletes and intense athletes, we think about how intense physical activity or acute stress, right? The body is flooded with adrenaline. Well, cannabis can help calm that sympathetic overdrive, you know, reducing that jittery, that hyper alert state caused by adrenaline. So, for example, an athlete recovering after a high pressure game, you know, or match, can use cannabis to help regulate their heart rate, relax their muscles, decrease that inflammation, promote healing. When I think about brain injury, concussion, cannabis can actually protect the brain cells, reduce inflammation and oxidative stress. And study shows that it supports neuroplasticity and helps the brain form new connections for recovery. So when I think about utilizing cannabis as one of the toolboxes that athletes can use, it is really a game changer. It can actually enhance that recovery through relaxation and improve pain perception through mind-body awareness.
Emily Fisher, Dr. June Shin from Leafwell with us live here on the Anik and Florian podcast. I want to go back to the Leafwell employer program just for a second, because it's interesting for me to think about leaving Disney, right? So I'm working at ESPN. I was not drug tested at Disney for cannabis, right? It's a major company. You would think maybe Mickey Mouse, they would test me for cannabis. They did not. Then I joined the UFC and I was drug tested for cannabis. Now, I don't know if they still drug test here 14 years later, what the threshold might be. But when I think about, like, Emily, benefit packages potentially through an employer, right, that would actually have some sort of cannabis package, it just feels so distant in a positive way relative to 2011, when, you know, they're trying to see if I smoked a joint once in the last month, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is really about giving people agency over their health. And so everything that we're doing is doctor-led, it's science-backed, it's personalized, and everything that we've done up until today has really positioned us uniquely to be able to offer this, because we're operating in 38 states, seeing thousands of patients every single month, following up with those patients. We've collected a significant amount of data, patient-reported outcomes. We've also been organizing the existing body of research out there to really start being able to provide this into organizations. So yeah, this is really about rethinking employer healthcare, and employee healthcare. So yeah, I think it's really changing, rethinking healthcare and how we sort of look at cannabis.
Dr. June, what is it like teaching students about cannabis and Leafwell in your world right now? I know it's Syracuse and other places. And how different is it maybe than when you first got up in front of a student body, however many years ago?
It is very different because you can major in cannabis science. You can understand the pharmacokinetics behind it. Like you had asked about, what type of different flowers or different strains or chemovars are good for recovery. We can break it down to the clinical applications. A 38-year-old athlete with a history of chronic migraines, which flowers would be better compared to a 65-year-old that has 2 rotator cuff surgeries and are on 5 different medications. That person might have different reactions to cannabis medicine than your 38-year-old. And that's what the data has been giving us all these years. And it's nice to be able to talk to undergraduates and graduates and postgraduates alike, because at different ends of the cannabis spectrum, we can apply this medicine not only in healthcare, but in ancillary applications as well, with coaches, with physical therapy, occupational therapy. So the landscape has changed quite a bit.
So if you're someone who's listening to this, right, you can go to leafwell.com and we'll give you the details at the end of the interview. But maybe you're someone who at one point in time has been prescribed with a prescription drug that might be cocaine in pill form, right? But they're giving it to 13-year-olds who have ADHD. Like, what can you do, Emily, right now if you're someone out there and you maybe have been hesitant, but maybe you're hearing a talking head like me talk about it and you're somewhat receptive? Is it as simple, depending on your age and where you are, as going to leafwell.com?
Well, people have the ability anywhere in the world really to speak to a healthcare provider through Leafwell. So it's not just, there are people in places where cannabis is still not available to them, but they are perhaps interested in finding out more. They can come onto our platform and speak to a provider and learn more. They can obviously access information on our website. But if you are in a state where cannabis is legal, and you're interested in how cannabis could potentially help you, the first thing that I'd recommend is to go on our website, and we have a huge body of information. And if you want to, you can speak to a healthcare provider. We have over 100 healthcare providers that work on our platform, and over 30 different medical specialties as well. So if you want to speak to, like me, I couldn't speak to any of the oncologists during my treatment about my cannabis use. So if you want to speak to an oncologist who is also a cannabis expert, you can do so. If you want to speak to a mental health expert, you can do so. And so I think that's really that's what I would sort of invite people to do. It's really bridging, someone who's curious, but maybe a little bit concerned. Maybe they're on medication and they want to understand the contraindications that could happen with the medication they're on. Our providers are extremely knowledgeable, and they are armed with all the data that we've been collecting over the last few years.
It's all incredible. Last thing, and I could never have foreseen a time when I could, admit this in a public forum, right? But my senior thesis that I wrote at Gettysburg College 25 years ago, how the media undermines American democracy. Right now, I was having anxiety I don't even know what I wrote, Dr. June. I know you're nodding your head in acknowledgement when I was done. No, I knew at the time what it was, but I dealt with my anxiety for that project with cannabis. And I sort of realized at that time that it was helping me in terms of my creative writing. And I come to you as a former print journalist who does so much writing for television. And I don't know if this is an unfair or selfish question, or I guess I just feel like it has not only helped my anxiety, but it also has been somewhat of a performance enhancer in terms of my ability to focus and maybe tap into a part of my creative brain that I wouldn't have otherwise tapped into. Is there any science or anything behind what I just said?
Yes, absolutely. Cannabis works on the endocannabinoid system, and that helps the body maintain homeostasis or equilibrium. So the ECS or endocannabinoid system interacts with brain receptors. So you figured out how it can help regulate stress, anxiety, and mood. So instead of numbing emotions, it actually allows patients to process emotions more calmly and thoughtfully.
It's interesting. It almost made me enjoy part of a process that inherently I wouldn't enjoy. All right. On Instagram, if you would like to follow along, at Leafwell_official, at Dr. June Chin. Emily, I didn't find a personal handle for you, but if it's out there, we will certainly graphically represent that. Dr. June Chin, Emily Fisher. I encourage everybody to go to leafwell.com/Anik. We'll pump that on the backside as well. Thank you guys, though, for joining us. And we look forward to the Green Corner, I guess, in a month or two. But thank you guys so much. Best of luck. And we're here to support in any way we can, of course.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, guys. Dr. June Shin and CEO Emily Fisher with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. Don't forget, tell your friends and family about Leafwell. Use code Anik. You get 20% off. You want to sleep better. You want to relax. You want to be a creative writer, perform better across the board in your professional and personal life. Now's the time. You can get approved for your medical card in just minutes. Leafwell.com/Anik. Leafwell.com/Anik. All right. Guest-driven program today. When we don't have UFC fights to recap, we can talk about things like the GFL and the Super Bowl and all of those things. And now with us on the guest line, I feel like this is an underrated talking head. And I know my twin brother, Jason Anik, agrees. I'm serious. The great Josh Cohen of South Florida radio fame. You may have heard him on ESPN radio or seen him on UFC Fight Pass alongside his former friend, Dean Thomas. Not even a face for radio. This guy looks in shape. He is single. Good morning, Josh.
First of all, I love how you say former friend, how you nailed that with the inside skinny. And when you say single, I mean, there's no ring on it, but I'm literally at my girlfriend's house in Ocala right now, and she's Colombiana, so she'll murder me and then maybe murder you after that. But good morning, gentlemen. Good afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you may be.
It is the afternoon. So can I ask how long you guys have been dating? I did think you were on the market. I apologize.
That's a great look, by the way. She's not home right now. Again, in her house that she owns, that I'm freeloading in. Because for you to say you didn't know that I was involved for 2.5 years makes it sound like maybe I'm not holding up my. What are you doing to me? Like literally, what? You're lucky her English is terrible. Because what are you doing to me?
John,
stop right now.
Yeah.
Kenny, please go ahead.
John sets up our guests one question at a time. He destroys you one question.
I guess so.
Time.
Yeah. He brings up old jobs. He says former friends. He says you act like you're single. I didn't know you had a girlfriend. You didn't seem that way. The way you conduct yourself publicly. Like what, bro? What the hell?
Bro, I'm a man of veracity. I'm an oversharer, right? So I could tell the masses that when you invited me for drinks in West Palm Beach, I sort of thought that we would be, hobnobbing a couple of single guys, which we're not. But I digress. Congratulations. I mean, are we going to put a ring on it? I mean, we could talk about her the whole fucking show.
Yeah, I mean, after this conversation, if she sees this shit, I probably will be single, to be honest.
Or you'll have to put a ring on it.
I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, I've never gotten married. Never got married.
Yeah.
Not in any rush to do that. But I absolutely would. I'm willing and able, wanting different. Somebody asked me, they said, well, how come you never got married? I said, half of marriages ends in divorce. If half of flights ended in crash, would you get on a plane?
That's good.
Choose your spots.
Well, no, right. There's only, I think there's one reason to get married, and that's procreation. We do not live in a polygamous world unless you're Zhalgish Yumagulov in Kazakhstan.
What a show today. People are like, hey, we're talking fights. No, we're going to smoke weed. John's going to Gettysburg College. We don't know who this loser is, but apparently doesn't have jobs or friends. And now he's on here, and he's about to lose his girlfriend too. So there's
by the way, Tyron Woodley coming up in 40 minutes if you want us to center things. But Josh, we have a lot of things that I would like to get to with you. Now, for those that haven't been following your every professional move, Questionable Call is your series on YouTube that I have leaned heavily into. You're also live on Instagram almost every day with your show. So before we get into some NFL stuff, some UFC stuff, where can people find your work, and what exactly are you and aren't you doing here as we begin 2025?
Yeah, the show's on YouTube, Questionable Call. You can find it at Questionable Call. It's literally the dumbest 4.5 minutes of your day where I make a big deal out of a little thing and make a huge deal out of a minor thing, and I scream at you. But it's NFL-based right now primarily, and it's literally just killing it. We're taking the story, connecting the dots. So in 4 minutes' time, you get all the angles on something maybe you didn't realize or read up on your own, and you get to go, oh, shit, okay, that makes sense. But really, it's just exploitative sensationalism that is really performing well. Right. So, you got to make a professional choice sometimes. Do you want to put out good work, or do you want to be successful? And I've just sold my soul like Sandler to Netflix, where it's like, I'll just turn out this shit every day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but it seems to work, so fine. Like, you can do good stuff and nobody's watching it, or you can do the garbage that I'm doing at Questionable Call on YouTube, and it'd be very widely viewed and successful. So I'll take this.
And I think it's questionable the extent to which it's garbage, right? Everybody has 4 minutes. They may not have 40. And the thesis statement on the Anik and Florian podcast has always been leave them wanting more. So
that's the idea. Yeah.
All right. So what was the questionable call today? Have you shot the show today?
Yeah, I'm in the midst of it right now. We're obviously getting into the Buffalo Bills and Kansas City Chiefs. And, the numbers don't lie. Since 2021, in the postseason, the Kansas City Chiefs have benefited more than any other team. And in comparison, in regard to their opponents, in every category, roughing the passer, defensive pass interference and or holding, unnecessary roughness, personal fouls. So there were those points in the AFC Championship game last night where really it just seems like whenever there is a, not to be, punny or promote a terrible show, a questionable or bad call, they always seem to go Kansas City's way. So we just spotlighted a couple of spots yesterday in which now other angles that we see, when you get further review upon this, you realize, Jesus H, like the officials, no benefits of the doubt to the Buffalo Bills, every benefit of the doubt to the Kansas City Chiefs. And while they didn't drop the ball, right, that was, Kincaid, and while they didn't decide plays, they certainly played major roles in that Xavier Worthy completed call, and then certainly the 4th and 1. Actually, the 3rd down was converted, and they called that short, and then the 4th down. So we're in the midst of spending 4 minutes on blowing you through how it is with the new information. The officials got it wrong yet again, and then how this will ultimately affect the Super Bowl, which is a matchup that, let's be honest, America really doesn't want to see.
At the former world champion Josh Cohen on Instagram. He's also on X. It's like Josh on the air or something like that. But he's
Josh on the
air on the Anik and Florian podcast. So let me just submit this to you, and then I'll get Kemflo in here. And I don't even know if Kemflo watched the championship games. He usually tunes in at this time of year for the NFL. So, but all right. So I agree with you in terms of Buffalo being on the wrong end of some calls and Kansas City getting every benefit of every doubt. But you and I both like Buffalo +2. It did not come in, right?
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, right? Can't we just suggest that they're just better than Sean McDermott and Josh Allen, right? Like Patrick Mahomes is significantly better, in my opinion, when push comes to shove for a singular play, a singular throw at a weird arm angle at the most opportune time. I think Patrick Mahomes, whatever fucking tier you want to put him in, I think Mahomes is better than Josh Allen, and Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo are much better than Sean McDermott, who quite frankly should be fired.
Yeah, and let's be honest, both can be true. All of the calls and all the breaks can continue to go Kansas City's way, and they can be better, and they can be better coached. What Josh Allen has done is unprecedented. You look at his numbers through his first 7 seasons versus Tom Brady, your boy Tommy, and what you're going to realize is Mahomes in those first 7 years, significantly outperforming Brady in every category. This dude's 29 years old, okay? He'll be 29 when the next season starts. And he's about to start his 5th Super Bowl. The only quarterbacks he's lost to in the postseason are Tom Brady and Joe Burrow. And by the way, had he lost that game in regulation last night, it would have been his earliest playoff exit ever.
Right.
Because the times that he did lose in the postseason was in a Super Bowl and in overtime against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. So the Chiefs are a good football team, take nothing away. But the numbers do not lie. In the postseason, when you look at just the numbers on the unnecessary roughness, the roughing the passer, the defensive pass interference and or holding, it's not that there's a slight advantage. There's such a disparity that there's a story there. The disparity is so great, in fact, that, and we're not saying that the league is rigged. And we're not saying the officials set it and the league is saying, hey, find ways for Kansas City to win. Sometimes you just get bias. Sometimes you get the benefit of the doubt. Michael Jordan used to get the benefit of the doubt. Patrick Mahomes appears to get the benefit of the doubt, but it comes at the most inopportune times for teams like the Buffalo Bills, and they almost always seem to play at those biggest moments in favor of the Chiefs. That said, they won the game yesterday, right? I mean, they made the plays yesterday. It's not solely on the officials. It's just that, again, it looks bad because now you've got the NFL with significant investment financially from sports books, who, by the way, benefited tremendously from Kansas City covering. And let's be honest, the NFL would love for the Chiefs to be in the Super Bowl because that means Taylor Swift. People go, it's stupid. Why would you say that? People don't realize the NFL is not concerned about the John Aniks, the Kenny Florians, and I. We're going to watch the game anyway. What they'd love is to develop females who don't watch the game, that they've been courting for 3 decades and really haven't, for the most part. They want young. They want the 12 to 18 demo, who, by the way, have spending power and will be future consumers of the game and of the advertising partners for decades. And those two parties aren't interested. Kendrick Lamar is not going to make a ton of young people watch the game that otherwise would, because they'll consume his halftime on TikTok and on X and on Instagram. But if Taylor Swift's going to be in the crowd in the suite, That means you've got a whole young demo and a female demo that otherwise wouldn't watch, that the NFL's been dying to get to pay attention to the game. They're going to now. And as we all know, all that matters is eyeballs, because that's what the hundreds of millions of dollars of generated revenue comes from in the television number. That audience wouldn't be there if she's not there because they're not interested otherwise.
Yeah, so you kind of brought it up. I'm curious about your comparison or your thoughts on the two dynamic duos of Andy Reid, Mahomes, and Belichick and Brady. You know, you've already made that comparison.
Yep.
Do you feel like it's only a matter of time before Mahomes and Reid overtake that duo of Belichick and Brady?
It feels that way, doesn't it? Again, 29 years of age. Patrick Mahomes, 5th Super Bowl start. They are, first of all, this is the most successful dynasty already in sports, because this is the only team ever going for a three-peat that actually reached the Super Bowl game. I know it sounds crazy, but every time prior when a team had won back-to-back Super Bowls, they couldn't win that conference championship game. So they're already now in an area that not just New England has never been, but those Steelers teams of the 70s and those Niners teams of the 80s and those Cowboys teams of the 90s, they never did it. So they're already in an air all by themselves. It does feel like it is just a matter of time before Mahomes and Reid supplant Brady and Belichick. But to do that, obviously, you count rings. And so we're still a few away from that 6th they got together and that 7th that your boy Tommy got in Tampa Bay when he got hammered on tequila, and his daughter said, "Daddy, don't throw the trophy from the boat." Which, by the way, was that not the most humanizing? Was that the best moment for Tom Brady's brand for the rest of America to go, you know, I like this guy. He's day drunk. He's disrespecting his child's wishes, and he's throwing the Lombardi from another boat. Like, it's one of those, it humanizes, it made him likable and relatable in ways we hadn't seen, because before he was just Tommy the robot.
Of course. Yeah, and I think television can help him too as far as relatability. So Josh Cohen with us here on the Anik and Florian podcast. So I don't want to belabor this too much, and I do want to get a UFC 312 prediction from you on the way out. But in terms of a Super Bowl prediction, and by the way, if Josh Allen just puts up a 35 spot, Taylor Swift doesn't matter. So a lot of what you said is a little bit lost on me. But as far as this game is concerned, I've already bet on Kansas City just because I look head coach, quarterback, kicker, intangibly. I just like Kansas City. You can get a minus 125 right now. Any early lean on the Super Bowl, and where will your action lie?
Yeah, I mean, this number, first of all, we all know the magic number is 3, right? The key number is 3. So if we ever see that, you know, something substantial has happened. People, you know, it used to be, you know, decades ago, the sports books really just wanted even action. We were all led to believe, well, they want, you know, 5 million on the left and 5 million on the right, and they'll keep the 10% juice in the for the losers. Not anymore. The sports books want to beat the public. They set out to beat the public, especially now that, you know, legalized sports betting is 40 states of the 50 in the U.S., and parlay players are new to this, and they're getting beat badly. My early lean is not really, there'll be significant line movement as we continue. I think late money probably will be Kansas City. But with that said, Kansas City has really lived a dangerous life since opening night. I mean, you remember, if Isaiah Likely wore shoe size 11, not 12, they may lose that opening night against the Baltimore Ravens. Every break and bounce of the ball has gone their way. From the Black Friday episode with the Raiders, from the blocked field goal nonsense with the Denver Broncos. You know, sooner or later, you start to run out of luck. It hasn't happened yet. Everything has gone to plan. It's almost like the football gods have intervened and decided it's preordained destiny for the Kansas City Chiefs. But Philadelphia, as you saw last night, you know, they run the ball well. Buffalo had their most success gouging that Kansas City Chiefs defense, and doing so with James Cook and a little bit of help from Josh Allen. You know, that running attack of the Philadelphia Eagles is a real problem. And they may say, we're going to limit your possessions. We're going to keep possession of the. Let's see what the next week and a half does for Jalen. Yeah, they have to. Let's see what the next week and a half does for Jalen Hurts and his health, because he played a game very unhealthy. This is obviously a climate-controlled game in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome there in New Orleans. But I like the Eagles in a spot where matchup-wise, and again, just matchup, you know, styles make fights, right? So in this fight, the style kind of favors Philadelphia, to be honest.
Yeah.
And not a blowout game and not some kind of a badly mismatched game, but it's one of those where you say, we're going to go to the judges' cards, and it's probably going to be, you know, like a 49-48 deal. It's going to be one of those where you say, well, they did just enough. You knew what they wanted to do. They were able to do what they, because, you know, just like a fight, you guys know, whoever gets to fight their fight generally has more success. And the one that has to adapt to that has to find ways. Philadelphia may get to play the game that they want against Kansas City more than the Chiefs can play the game and execute the game they were hoping to. So my early lean is going to be Eagles.
All right, and I have 10 seconds. Dricus du Plessis -198, Sean Strickland +164, UFC 312. Will you have any action there?
Du Plessis, I think, is one of those guys that stays ready more than has to get ready. So we're going to stay with him. It just seems he's in a different place, headspace, and you know, in his life.
All right, the former world champion on Instagram, Josh Cohen. Check out Questionable Call on YouTube. Best 4 minutes of your day. Thank you, buddy. Enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll talk soon.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Josh. All right, Josh Cohen with us live here on the Anik and Florian podcast. We did not get a prediction from him on UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov, because that is our next exercise. And in 2025, as many of you know, we are given a unique opportunity to some of our listeners and viewers. We have about 350 entries, but this is an on-air handicapping opportunity to cap alongside the great Kenny Florian and Brian Petrie, who, of course, is not with us today mourning the loss of his dear mother, Barb. But with us today, he's out of St. Charles, Missouri. And I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Kurtis Hoagland. Put him in the middle, Kurtis. How do you pronounce your surname, sir? Oh, he's on mute. He's on mute. Can we get some audio for Kurtis? He looks fantastic, though. Look at this. Damn. He's got all the bells. No,
there we go.
Appreciate you, boys. No, you nailed it, John. Kurtis Hoagland. Right on the screws, man. How we doing, boys?
I love the sound of your voice. Petrie is probably nervous because I love your voice. So, dude, you got the whole setup. How we doing, Kurtis? Good?
Dude, doing great. You know, took a little PTO today. Figured I'd come in. You guys threw up the bat signal. I said, you know, let me put on the cape, swoop in here, see what we can get done. Be honest, didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Was a little nervous, staying up, doing a little research and stuff. Woke up wide awake at 1 o'clock, but I'm good, boys. I'm happy to be here. I do want to give like a personal condolences to Brian Petrie. I know I wouldn't be here without that, and been through a similar journey there. So I hope my guy's doing all right.
That's very kind of you. And if you do want to follow Kurtis Hoagland, it's at Mad Max Meridian on X. And you're coming on at a good time, right? Because a lot of our listenership right now wants to choke me out for doing that much NFL content in the middle of the show, right? So they're excited to hear about some mixed martial arts. But basically, you're going to be with us for the main event challenge. And then, of course, you will have $1,000 to spend on UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov. Before we get into that, just a little bit curious about you, about St. Charles, Missouri, about what your day job is and what your sort of MMA watching habits and betting habits are like. So what does your world look like?
Man, where to start here? So I'm an analyst for an aerospace company. Been with them for about the last 6.5 years, creeping in on 7 here. Been doing jiu-jitsu. This summer will be 14 years. I was I guess you consider Ronin for quite some time, for about 10, 11 years. I'm sure Kenny Florian knows all about the Ronin situation. No gi 90% of the time. Finally decided to drink the Kool-Aid and threw on a gi about 6 months ago, actually. So I joined a Humaita school here in Wentzville. First fight I ever watched live, pay-per-view, I went to Dave & Buster's and watched Brock Lesnar and Shane Carwin get after it. I was coming from like a WWE fandom and then came in there, you know, screaming my face off for Brock Lesnar, only to then get the head and arm choke out of nowhere, which was pretty excellent. You can see his big old back flex and just squeeze the hell out of him. Yeah, man, I've met a lot of the. I feel like it's a little bit of an untapped market here in St. Charles. We've got like a pocket, but it's starting to get some attention. Obviously, we've got CJ, you got Charles Johnson, you got Sean Woodson. Yeah. You guys are going to have Tyron on here in a little bit. That's 20 miles from here, something like that. So, of course, Joaquin Buckley, it goes without saying. We just had that St. Louis event here a couple months ago, which was, I mean, insane. I'm sure Dana was going nuts about the crowd being here pretty much from the first prelim on. We had that place packed out, but it was excellent, man. I'm a diehard fan. It's about the only sport that I follow, to be honest with you.
Well, we're happy to have you, man. Yeah, betting wise. So what do you do? I mean, is it legal where you are? What's all that about?
Well, let's we'll talking hypotheticals about that one.
Of course.
Yeah, if I was like hypothetically betting, I would probably play in a lot of like props, a lot of picking my shots. I'm used to be or if I was an actual bettor, I hypothetically used to be a bit of a volume guy, and I had to last couple years really reel it back and kind of pick your shots instead of kind of like a shotgun pattern, throwing everything and hoping something sticks. You got to pick your shots and smack the hell out of them. So I've kind of moved more to that, and yeah, man, it's a good time. Adds a little spice to the fight nights sometimes.
Well, we're excited to have you. We never know exactly who we are bringing on. We don't necessarily vet you guys. We used to have a different listener on every week, but it's absolutely great to have you. Congrats on your commitment to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You are a better man than I, and really excited to break these fights down with you. So without further delay, let us dive right into it. Our first fight is going to be a main card offering in the featherweight division. Muhammad Naimov right now minus 258 on DraftKings Sportsbook, taking on Khan Offley, who is plus 210. Little background for you boys. Naimov out of Tajikistan, 3-1 of the UFC. No shame in being submitted by Felipe Lima. That was his last appearance. It was last June, also in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and now he draws Indonesia's Khan Offley. Kurtis, the floor is yours. Any thoughts for us on Naimov and Offley?
Man, I'm glad you get to say the names first for me. I don't have the teddy bear charm of Brian Petrie, but I can fuck up a name with the best of them. So, watching some of the tape last night, a few things stood out to me. Naimov, I actually feel like he's pretty relatively defensively sound. He doesn't offer up a lot of holes in his game to take advantage of. Now, of course, kind of slipped up in a bit of an exchange there going for a takedown, and he kind of did like a 3-point post, which then, of course, exposed his neck. He kind of went chin up a little bit and allowed Lima to slip underneath there. Conversely, on the other side, Khan leaves his head on the center line a little bit too much for me. I also notice he gets a hair flat-footed at times, almost reactive to a point. It seemed like there was a point in the fight where he was kind of waiting to see what Santos was going to do and then react accordingly, as opposed to implement his own game plan. And then when it came time to do that, he rushed it and got caught as a consequence. Given the versatile arsenal that Naimov has to offer with the wheel kicks and the chopping low kicks, the thigh stomps, everything else, there are times where I disagree with the odds makers. This isn't one of those times. I kind of think they've got this right here. I could potentially even see Naimov getting the finish, but I'm going to take Naimov here. I think he's nearly a 3-1 favorite, something like that, but I think they've got it right on this one.
Yeah, that's nicely laid out. Minus 258 or so, Kemflo, for Muhammad Naimov. Offley, yes, was knocked out in his UFC debut last August. Well-rounded, pretty good submission game, at least on paper, Kenny, but largely untested. Your thoughts on this one here in the featherweight division? Kit.
Yeah, and that's just it. With Khan Offley, it's tough to know what kind of fighter he is, and certainly got caught big time in that tough finale. Tough way to come back from. But yeah, it just seemed real stiff. Seemed stiff. Didn't seem as experienced when it comes to the stand-up game. I'm sure he's still learning that aspect. But however, who knows? Maybe he hits some takedowns here and is able to control and get a win that way. But to me, you got to go with what you know and what you've seen. And for me, Naimov, is the proven fighter. Not only does he have he lost his last one, but had some momentum prior to that. But he's faced actually good competition. And for me, that means a lot. That means more. So give me Naimov as well.
All right, next fight on the main card in the bantamweight division. Some, Kenny, might call this a bout of consequence. The underappreciated Said Nurmagomedov minus 198, Vinicius Oliveira plus 164. Can't wait to see how this fight plays out. Outstanding job by the matchmakers, in my humble opinion. Nurmagomedov 7-2 in the UFC. Hasn't fought, though, since a first-round stoppage of Muin Gafarov via guillotine, and that win has obviously aged well, given Muin's last performance. That was UFC 294, October 2023. So no fights last year. Returning here against the electric lock dog, Vinicius Oliveira. Kurtis, who do you have for us in this one at 135 pounds, brother? Kurtis, can you hear me, kid?
I had some audio cut out there. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Who do you have? Said Nurmagomedov, minus 198. Vinicius Oliveira's plus 164.
I was a little torn on this. Odds makers, again, I feel like have this one actually pretty right. Old Vinny Olives kind of, he gets a little bit of a long, no relation to Charlie Olives. He does keep his hands pretty low, though, which I think generally is going to be kind of a mistake. But in this fight against Nurmagomedov, no relation to Khabib and company, but somebody who's going to be shooting takedowns and the like, I think keeping those hands low might actually help him in that department. Now, there's a kicking game that Nurmagomedov brings into this where he's got like a real light front leg, great calf kicks, got a stabbing front kick. He kind of does like this, I guess it's almost a question mark kick as well, where he'll snap it up and out there. With those low hands, I think potentially he could catch. Is it Loke Dog? Is that from Don't Be a Menace?
It is. You know what? I think I fucked that up on the broadcast too, and it's not Lock Dog.
I think it's Loke Dog.
Right. Yeah.
You ever seen that movie, Don't Be a Menace to South Central?
Yeah, just not in a while, you know?
Yeah, I think that's what it is, man. Grew up watching that movie way before I should have, probably.
Cohen's saying in the chat that Lock Dog is way better. Kenny, doesn't Lock Dog sound better?
It does sound better.
My favorite nickname right now is Danny Barlow.
Right. Yeah.
Danny Barlow, left-handed God. Left-handed God? All right, sorry, Curtis. Go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Long story short, I'm going Saeed Nurmagomedov on this one. I think there's going to be a grappling advantage. I think Vinny Olives fights a little bit with an ego, too. In that last fight, there was a point where he kind of hands down and was like mean mugging and kind of showboating to an extent. And with somebody as experienced as Saeed is, he's got 9 fights in the UFC. I don't think that's the game plan to implement here. So I'd go that route.
I hope Saeed doesn't take this the wrong way, but if my last name's Nurmagomedov, I'm calling Habib being like, hey, man, can we just be cousins or corner me or something? Exactly. So Saeed was to face Montel Jackson last June. Jackson ranked number 15, by the way. Daniel Santos last October, then Daniel Marcos last December. He wasn't the pulling out party in all 3 of those, but it's been a while. On the other side, Vinny Olives plus 164, Kenny. I think he's one of the better fighters no one's talking about. He's 21-3, beat Ricky Simone last summer. What do you have for us on the bantamweights, Ken Flo?
Yeah, I mean, these are 2 of the biggest bantamweights in the game, actually, right now. Oliveira just a tad bigger, in my opinion. So I'm curious to see how their weight cuts go here in this one. Oliveira, very powerful. If there's a guy who can land a shot and knock you out in the 135-pound division, it is Oliveira. Has some serious power. He's very game as well. We saw him deal with a whole lot of adversity against Sopai in his debut. Sopai's debut, I believe, as well. Was able to battle back from some really bad positions. And then on the feet just seemed real comfortable. I am concerned with those hands a little bit low there. I think Nurmagomedov, just like Usman, Nurmagomedov is very tricky with that lead leg. And he's just a craftier striker, I think, is Nurmagomedov. But Oliveira is a more dangerous striker. But I think the easiest path to victory is for Nurmagomedov to use his wrestling, slow down Oliveira, and take him out of the place where he's most dangerous. So I like Saeed here. I think there was some value there on Oliveira, but I like Saeed. But we haven't seen him in a while. Let's see how he looks here.
Really like that fight. All right, next up, Kenny, we'll go right back to you on this one to lead us off. Big things at heavyweight. Sergey Pavlovich minus 298. Biggie boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik comes back plus 240. So little bit of a rough go of it for Pavlovich of late, Kenny, since he rose to an interim title fight against Tom Aspinall. That was November 2023. Humbled by Alexander Volkov, his former teammate last June in Saudi Arabia. So now 18-3 from 18-1 for Pavlovich. And he faces the heavy-handed Rozenstruik, who is coming off a perfect 2024 in which he won both of his fights. Ken Flo, lead us off on the heavyweights, if you would.
Yeah, this is a tricky one, and I'm really curious to see what Pavlovich we see here. Is this a guy who really wasn't that good all along? He was just really dangerous and wild and was catching guys? Or is he, this striker that's a lot more sophisticated than we thought and perhaps maybe down on his luck as far as confidence goes? I don't know what the answer to that is. I think we're going to find out here against Rozenstruik, who is another dangerous striker and sometimes needs a willing dance partner for him to look good. I think Pavlovich might be that guy. Either way, I think it's going to be really exciting. I think there's value here on Rozenstruik. I think Pavlovich, maybe people have the blueprint on him and aren't as scared of that scary Russian guy that we saw, a few years back. And I think Rozenstruik's going to look to try to counter him and may just catch the big dangerous Russian. But yeah, I'm leaning towards Rozenstruik here. I think there's some good value for him there as the underdog.
Based upon past fighter meetings with Rosenstrike, I feel like he really is going to like this matchup. He's been waiting for an opportunity like this, getting a guy who's top 4 in the world. And let me just say, I've talked about this on the show before, shaking Jairzinho Rosenstrike's hand. That's the one. That's the hardest handshake of my life. So when you see what he did to Alistair Overeem's lip, it's like that almost happened to my hand and we were just shaking hands. So what do you have for us, Kurtis? We got Rosenstrike, number 9 in the world, plus 240, taking on 4th-ranked Pavlovich, the minus 298 favorite.
Man, I think Kenny pretty well nailed this one. I got to agree with him on it. I think Pavlovich is dangerous. Of course, he's got like the crazy ape index reach going on here. And of course, a willingness to engage and get in there. But to me, he's almost reminds me a little bit of an old school like Ubereem type thing where it's like he loves to be the hammer. But then as soon as he starts getting tagged up, there's like almost like a gun shy factor that starts kicking in and he kind of will turn away and things like that. And a guy with the kickboxing background of Rosenstrike, I think, is the perfect person to kind of accommodate some of those fears that you're going to get from Pavlovich. I could definitely see a big counter strike or something like that from Rosenstrike there. I mentioned earlier times where I'll disagree with the odds makers, and this is probably one. I would say Pavlovich should be the favorite. He shouldn't be a 3-1 favorite. Yeah. And for the money, I'm going Rosenstrike on this one. I think he can catch him and get it done.
Interesting. Both kind of like Biggie Boy, Jairzinho Rosenstrike. And by the way, Sergey Pavlovich, most intimidating guy for me in the fighter meetings now, superseding Roman Dolidze. I'm just so nervous interviewing that guy. Short and sweet, Sergey. I promise. No further questions, Your Honor. All right, co-main event, Kenny at middleweight. Shara Magomedov, minus 198. Number 15, Michael Venom Page is plus 164. So I think MVP got married last weekend. Shara Bullet, returning after that knockout of the year candidate, double spinning back fist against Armen Petrosyan. He is 4-0 in the UFC, Kurtis, 15-0 overall. MVP, of course, in the rankings now, despite a loss his last time out. It came to Ian Machado Gary at UFC 303. Kurtis, we'll have you lead us off on the co-main event, and then Kenny, you can lead us on the headliners. What do we make of this one? Kurtis Hoagland, Shara Bullet, the 2-1 favorite.
Man, I was torn on this one. I think this is probably one of the more exciting matchups on the card, but it's also one of the ones that's the hardest for me to predict how it's going to play out. And I think a lot of that comes from two extremely dynamic strikers. You're going to get some amount of like variability in the turnout and like an unpredictable factor there. I would say Shara, given like another 1 or 2 years to develop as a fighter, I would pick him all day long. Given where he's at in his career and the experience of MVP, for plus 164, I kind of think he might get it done here. I think he might be a hair faster. Now, he's got that long kind of bladed stance, so susceptible to leg kicks, things like that, but it's not like he's not aware of this. Shara also, I'm sure you guys have seen a little bit of the YouTube videos and stuff. There's like an emotional component where there's that whole jiu-jitsu tournament, got heel hooked and kind of, I don't want to say he flipped out, but he certainly lost his cool a little bit. And against a frustrating fighter like MVP, that may be a big fighter, somebody who can pull you out of your cool, out of your game plan.
That's interesting.
I'm willing to go MVP on this for plus 164. I'll take it. Let's lose some money on him.
Kenflo, Michael Venom Page, 37 years of age. I think he is still in movement as fast a fighter as there is in any division. I don't think that blitz is a skosh slower than it was in whatever fighting prime he is removed from in the eyes of some. Fought a couple times in his rookie year in the UFC and got hitched a week ago. Now he's getting in there with Shara Bullet. Fascinating co-main event, and like to know which side of it you fall on.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the speed there, John. He's a very imposing figure up there. You know, whether it's his long reach or the way he presents his stance, it tends to throw off a lot of guys, just that alone. His feints, his ability to blitz you at the right time, and him not really being so concerned with takedowns here, I think we may see MVP at his best, or at least have the potential to see it. But just like Kurtis said, you know, to predict exactly what we think is going to happen here and to say that we know what's going to happen here, I don't know. Magomedov is a very good striker as well. And finally, in my opinion, looking very comfortable in the octagon now. He kind of has more of a karate style of kickboxing, if you will. Now, if one one fighter here is going to play that better, I would have to lean the way of MVP. Now, he is fighting at middleweight and not welterweight, which I think is going to be an advantage for him. I did not know about the wedding thing. That kind of is throwing me off a little bit more just because this was a close fight to begin with. But we have two fantastic, exciting, fast, dynamic strikers here going at it. And to me, it's fascinating. So I'm going to lead towards MVP. Why? Well, he's the underdog. And when you have a fight that's this close, I'm going to lean the way of the underdog here. And I still think we haven't seen MVP at his best in the UFC, but this might be the fight. Give me the underdog MVP.
All right, good stuff. The boys are aligned. We get to our middleweight main event, 5 rounds from Saudi Arabia, number 2 ranked contender, the former champ Israel Adesanya, minus 170 or so. Number 5, Nassourdine Imavov, plus 142. So it has been 6 years, as we said off the top of the show, since Adesanya found himself at a non-title fight. He's lost 2 in a row, 3 of his last 4. Kenny, it's going to be really interesting to see how Adesanya competes here in what is undeniably a critical spot for him. Imavov's on an absolute tear. Who do you like in the headliner come Saturday night, kid?
Yeah, so, for Imavov, I think he needs to fight very aggressively in this one. Sometimes he likes to hang back, and maybe that's because sometimes he fears the takedowns a little bit and looks to try to counter, slow the guy down, then kind of use his striking in the clincher from the outside. Now, I don't think he needs to worry about that here against Israel Adesanya, and vice versa as well. I don't think Adesanya necessarily has to be so concerned with the takedown game of Imavov. When I look at them as strikers, I think Imavov might have more power. I think he might be more effective in close with, like, let's say a plum or tie clinch. But Adesanya is going to be the slicker guy, and that's the game he has to play here. People may not want to hear this, but I think for Adesanya to win this fight, it almost may have to look a little bit boring. Why? He has to play the role of the technician here. If he starts to throw down or get emotional here against Imavov, he's just going to play right into Imavov's game and allow Imavov to land some big strikes and hurt Izzy. So Izzy's got to use those long-range strikes, the leg kicks, the teeps to the body, the jab, especially to set everything up. And the big concern for me, even though I'm picking Izzy, I'll release that now. I am picking Izzy. Is a city kickboxing. They all tend to do the same thing. They'll lean back with their chin up as they try to exit. We saw it with Volkanovski. He paid for it against Topuria. We saw it against Adesanya. Well, he paid for it in his last fight against DDP when he was getting hit with hooks and overhand shots. Those are the shots that you're going to open yourself up to. Now, the other thing you could do is kind of duck down and try to swing it. Well, knees and kicks start to come. So if you had to pick between those two things, if you're not just going to keep your hands up and tuck your chin, I would probably do what the city kickboxing guys are doing. However, that could be a problem against Imavov. He's going to have to watch out for that. I'm picking Izzy here, but I think there's value here in Imavov. I'm a little nervous. Intuition-wise, I don't know. I feel a little funny about this one, but big fan of Izzy, so I hope he pulls it off.
He releases his Israel Adesanya selection. Now I'm just going to want to know, are we still supposed to be buying Bitcoin every day? It's down to 99. Should I still be buying this? Maybe you can answer that. Yes. Okay. By the way, business manager for the Anik and Florian podcast, Jason Anik, just came in here to deliver 2 messages. He's a big Kurtis Hoagland fan, so that's a good sign. And then he brought me a cup of black coffee, nice and hot in the middle of the show. What a fucking egg. All right. Kurtis Imavov has not lost since a main event setback against Sean Strickland. That was early 2023, and that was at light heavyweight. He's never been knocked out, certainly made a big statement against Brendan Allen back in September. 3 straight wins, all of the high quality, Roman Dolidze, Jared Cannonier, BA. Of course, none would be bigger than the one he can secure this weekend. Your thoughts on him against Izzy come Saturday night?
Man. So I mentioned the MVP fight was like one of the harder ones to pick for me on the card. This is probably the hardest one for me to pick on the card. I have flip-flopped on this in just the last 12 hours, probably about 3 different times. Kenny touched on something here that I was noticing just in the breakdowns, and of course that's Adesanya's propensity to lean straight back, given the nasty 1-2 that Nassourdine throws. Very similar to Sean Strickland, actually, his 1-2. Now, not with the same volume, but he throws it in a pretty similar manner. I was wondering if Imavov might actually catch him with that. you got to wonder if Father Time starts to become a factor a little bit. I'm not going to say is he like the mileage is starting to rack up and like be very noticeable, but I do think in the Dreykus fight that he was, I won't even say a half a step slower. We'll say a quarter of a step slower, but there was just something that wasn't there in the striking that used to be there. I guess you could call it like the it factor or whatever you want to chalk it up to, but I didn't see it. I don't see it anymore. So for that, I mean, I'll keep it short and sweet here. And for the drama, since we've been on the same page, I'm going to Imavov.
There
I'm going
you
to
go.
Imavov. Bet in the
There
house
you
on
go.
him. Let's do it.
Askren stiff as a board. All right. My favorite part of the show, if I could be a part of any segment on this godforsaken program, it would be one time to just take part and place your bets. Place your bets brought to you by johnanik.com, where you can get 15% off your merchandise order with promo code UFC 312. All of your Anik and Florian podcast merchandise at johnanik.com, also kennyflorian.com. And yes, 4, I think, maybe potential new designs coming out here in 2025, including Ken Flo's mug on a lot of those t-shirts. All right. You guys have $1,000, $1,000 American dollars to spend. It is UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov. The prop king, Kurtis Hoagland, wants to get in here. Look at this with his UFC Fight Night all lit up in the back, man. This dude's threatening to get a return invite. All right. $1,000. You got one band, Kurtis Hoagland. How are you spending your money?
Man, I figured I'd pull out all the stops here. The goal is to come in, make everybody some dough, and then get an invite to come back. There you go. That's a Christmas present from the girlfriend's mom, so got to give her some props there for that. So we're going to take the $1,000. We're going to split it 3 ways. I'm not actually a big parlay player, but this one had me a little interested. I'm going to take Naimov and Nurmagomedov, slap them together for a parlay. I think it was around like plus 105, something in that ballpark. We're going to put $500 on it.
Okay.
The OV parlay.
Nice. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Yeah. That's good.
Next, we're going to go with the prop plays I was asking about. I was torn on the Pavlovich Rosenstrike. I almost did both of them inside the distance. You're probably going to get plus money, hedge it out. But I was like, you know what? Let's just do the under 1.5. It's minus 230. Let's do $250 on it. We're going to put a quarter down.
All right.
And then last but not least, I guess I'll let my nuts hang against old Kenny Florian. We're going to Imavov plus 145, 250.
I like that. So Nasruddin Imavov straight for 250, and then it's under 1.5 rounds for the heavyweights at minus 130. Is that accurate?
I'm going under 1.5. Yeah, minus 230, 250. Yes, sir.
Cool. And then, of course, the 2-legger on Naimov and Nurmagomedov. All right, Ken Flo, get $1,000 to spend. I'll update the results in a week or so for UFC 312, but first things first, Ken Flo, how you spending your money?
Yeah, boy. All right, here we go. Let's give me $500 on Naimov.
Okay.
Give me $300 on Saeed Nurmagomedov.
Yep.
You call him Big Nurm? Is that what? No, Little Nurm? I don't know. Anyway. All right, and then a little spritz. $100 on Rosenstrike. $100 on MVP. Let's go.
Oh. All right, that's good. Sorry, I'm just... I'm thinking about Big Norma Dumont right now. And, maybe that gives
Little
Brian
nerves.
Petrie. I got to think Brian Petrie is going to ingest this today, as he is mourning. So it's good that we drop a big norm for you, Bri.
Yeah,
Can't wait to have you back, buddy. But an outstanding job by Kurtis Hoagland at Mad Max Meridian. Kurtis, does your cell phone number begin 314 by chance?
Used to till I switched it to a Tennessee area code. That's where the rest of the family lives.
Okay.
Real close to Nashville. 931, brother.
All right, but he still reps the 314.
You got
really
it.
appreciate you hopping on short notice. You undeniably have earned a return trip. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best with your bets, and don't be a stranger, buddy. We'll be in touch. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Thanks for having me, boys. Love you.
Good stuff.
All right, there he is, Kurtis Hoagland at Mad Max Meridian, and it is interesting to hear from some of our listeners and viewers and some of the guys that I've reached out to. One guy started listening episode 167 in 2018, and here we are, episode 534 or whatever it is. Tyron Woodley coming up here in a minute, hopefully. I just want to ask you real quickly about a pretty outstanding fight that was turned in between Paul Hughes and Usman Nurmagomedov. All the rage, majority decision. I didn't think it was nip and tuck necessarily, but I think both guys saw their stocks rise. Did you happen to see the fight?
I did not see the fight. I caught some highlights. But yeah, heard it was a really great fight. Heard it was very close. Saw Habib inviting Paul Hughes and his team, or family over to Dagestan, which is really cool. So a lot of respect from, out of both of those guys. But heard it was a great fight.
That Nurmagomedov team, they really are so humble, and I understand that Merab Dvalishvili called Umar Nurmagomedov's humility into question multiple times in the lead up to their fight, but Usman Nurmagomedov, you can see, just immediately putting Paul Hughes over. I really appreciated the way he sort of handled the graciousness in victory, and even if Usman didn't think the fight was necessarily as close as some people did, and Paul Hughes, just an absolute warrior, and a great ambassador for his promotion, for his country, and everything else. All right, we are hopeful to be joined by Tyron Woodley and talk a little bit about the GFL. You know what Tyron mentioned, by the way, and I'm going to ask him about it. He has a golden visa in Dubai, so he can be there for like 10 years.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you ever, you lived in Brazil for 6 months. Not to suggest that Brazil has a golden visa per se, but did you ever have any long-term visa that allowed you to? No. But
you know what's cool about Dubai is there's no taxes if you live there. If you set up shop over there, it's very tax, tax.
Well,
positive,
that's what's going to be interesting, right? Like how much time I know Javier Mendez spends a lot of time there. I know Tyron Woodley spends a lot of time there. But Cain Velasquez, I don't think is going to be over there indefinitely, right?
Right.
I don't know exactly what is going to happen with all of that. So we are going to wait about 5 more minutes as we're live for Tyron Woodley. And if not, maybe he will join us later today. Don't forget, we will be live with Jeremy Stevens on the Anik and Florian podcast YouTube channel 1 hour from now to discuss his big BKFC victory and to also discuss the potential of a fight for him with Conor McGregor. It's so interesting that, and I don't know when it was, and maybe Cody can chase this, when Conor McGregor turned around faithfully at that press conference and said, "Who the fuck is that guy?" Right? One of the greatest utterances.
Who the fuck is that guy? Yeah.
In UFC press conference history. And yet, isn't it poetic and prophetic and perhaps ironic, if that's the right adjective, that however many years later, Lil Heathen drops a cocaine Conor on you, and with all the alliteration in the world, and could potentially have that fight. David Feldman says that's the fight that Conor wants. And I didn't intend to say this. I was actually going to go UFC 312 here, but let me just say this, right? So Conor McGregor, I believe, did an interview with the Schmo, and he said that the UFC was not interested in him fighting Logan Paul, right? Okay. Now, Conor has sort of suggested in some part that it would be an exhibition. I forget the exact word that he used, right? But you can't be the least bit surprised that the UFC has no appetite for him in a boxing setting. They do have his rights in combat sports, and I know we all should be thankful for Conor McGregor, right? And certainly in terms of me and my family and my livelihood, he has been inexorably linked, I think, to that and helping grow the sport of mixed martial arts. But if you're the UFC, you don't care about the TKO banner and the WWE connection. You want to see Conor McGregor fight Dan Hooker. You don't want to see him fight Logan Paul. It's certainly not going to expedite his return to the octagon to have him compete with, 225-pound Logan Paul, right?
Right. And for me, it just brings up more questions as to how serious is he about this? So how serious is he about getting back to fighting, or even MMA for that matter? And I don't know, man. I think it's going to be tough to get him back into the cage or get him back into a ring or whatever it is. I think he might be more into fun fights and making money. And that's totally fine. But maybe to expect him to say, "Hey, I'm going to make a run at being a world champion again," that's going to be a big ask, I think.
I've been wrong a lot, and I'm not some predictor or some prognosticator, but Kenny, you've been here for, I think, all but one of these 534 episodes. And I think you would agree that the take that I have been most wrong on has been Conor McGregor's MMA legacy, his desire to improve his body of work on paper, the competitive spirit, and the mixed martial artist that resides within, I thought would drive him back to the UFC.
Right.
And I didn't even intend to talk about this necessarily today, but when I think about that interview that I saw and his desire for a Logan Paul fight and now the Jeremy Stevens fight, it is deflective of the real business that is there for him in the octagon against Michael Chandler or anybody else, and I don't know that I've ever been more wrong in terms of my insistence, Kenny, that he was not going to enjoy retirement as much if he didn't come back and get another MMA scalp or two. And now, if you ask me, is he ever going to compete in the UFC again? I'd probably say no.
Well, John, you've been around since when Conor McGregor had his first fight. And I think that I was definitely in that same camp for a little bit, because there most certainly is a martial artist within Conor McGregor. There is this guy that wants to test himself, who has that competitive fire, and who has shown that over the course of his career. But so much has changed at this point where I don't know, I don't know if we ever get him back, but it certainly would be nice to see that guy, not to just see him compete. I don't want to just see him compete. I want to see that old Conor McGregor come back and take things, very seriously, because he is a force of nature, man. To see what he has accomplished over the course of his career, when he is serious and when he is dedicated and motivated, that's a scary dude. And I think a lot of people would love to see that Conor McGregor back, but I'm not sure we're going to see it.
It's crazy to think that we could ever feel shortchanged by a guy that has done so much for mixed martial arts. But you mentioned the money, and I don't know what his net worth is, but at some point you have to wonder aloud if it's not the spotlight that is driving him back, right? Because certainly he is a part owner of BKFC, right? And he is omnipresent. You see him all over the place. And anytime he pushes anything out there on social media, of course, it is going to be repurposed. But I don't know that the goal is money if you're trying to fight Jeremy Stephens in BKFC. Maybe it's just being non-committal in totality to an 8 or 12-week mixed martial arts training camp and everything that might entail, right? Depending on who the matchup was, right? I mean, you don't think Michael Chandler's going to wrestle, right? A little bit.
Right. No, and I think you're partially correct, right? Because it's also about all right, how much time do I need to put into this thing to make the most amount of money possible, right? And that way. So, and to dedicate yourself to an MMA camp is a lot more time and effort to make, the same amount than say, let me put 4 weeks into just boxing. It's going to be way easier on my body and I'll probably make just as much, so I don't know, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
All right. Well, we will see what happens with Conor McGregor, and later today we'll be live with Jeremy Stephens, actually about 53 minutes from now, over on the ANIK and Florian podcast YouTube channel. And just got to feel good for the Iowan Jeremy Stephens, right? He said that there was a time in his career where he lost a fight and he didn't hear from his mother nor his dad. And I think he is somewhat of a mentality right now that's like F everybody, and it's just nice to see him get that shine, because I don't know where I read it or who said it, and I trot it out there a lot. They say the most basic human need is to feel appreciated. And, I've tried very hard to not need to be validated, but it does feel good, when you get that appreciation. And even if I don't maybe get it from my bosses or my producers as much as I would like, I get it from the UFC fan base, and it drives me and it gives me confidence when I go to the broadcast booth. And I think for Jeremy Stephens, right, to be the talk of the town, so to speak, to begin 2025, to do what he did on a UFC Dark Week and have everybody talking about him as a guy, as who goes back to the Josh Neer days, who has been totally married to the game for a quarter century, right? Think about the Rafael dos Anjos fight in 2008. Can't help but feel good for this guy to get all this shine.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, he was in the UFC at 19 or 20 years old, and Jeremy Stephens has carried that gameness and that passion for fighting to the present day. And to see him get that win in an auditorium where everybody, in an arena where everybody was chanting Eddie's name, and to get it done with some nasty striking, I think that's what Jeremy Stephens lives for. So I thought it was a fantastic win against another obviously dangerous guy in Eddie Alvarez, and good for him, man. It is very rare to see a guy compete in combat sports for as long as Jeremy Stephens, and to have this level of success where you do have to prove it time and time again, John. To your point about feeling validated, every fight is different, and every fight is a different challenge. And to go out there and do it and maybe not get some great results, and then to come back after all these years and get a win in a huge setting like that, that's huge, man.
Different weight classes. You think about him fighting Jose Aldo back in the day. I mean, in some part, he was a UFC lightweight during your era, was he not?
Yep.
Yeah.
He was indeed. Yep.
All right. We'll talk to Jeremy Stevens later. Sorry we couldn't track down Tyron Woodley. He said 1 second, but we are live and we've given him about 10 minutes. But if you don't know, he was the #1 pick of this Global Fight League. So we will effort him over the next week or so to try to hear from T. Wood, who had ghosted MMA for a little bit, but it's good to see him getting back to his roots. Thank you to our guest today, Ray Longo. Hopefully he was okay with the hard-hitting nature of our interview today. Thanks to Kurtis Hoagland stepping up and stepping in for Brian Petrie. We all say a prayer for the Petrie family. Thanks to our Leafwell family, Emily Fisher and Dr. June Chin. Thanks to Josh Cohen. And thanks to all of you for joining us live over the last 2 hours. Far from done today, though. We'll be back in about 45 minutes live with Jeremy Stevens. And don't forget, next week, all hands on deck, UFC 312 Duplessis versus Strickland Act 2. You can go to UFC Fight Pass in about a week, and Ken Flo and I will watch that fight back and provide some running commentary as well. Thanks to our executive producer, Cody Merrow, and everybody at DraftKings, Magic Spoon, and everybody else. Cuervo, we will talk to you guys 2 p.m. Eastern over on the Anik and Florian Podcast YouTube channel. With that, for Ken Flo, I'm John Anik. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Yo fucking later.
I love this shit.